Good morning, good morning. I probably don't look that great right now. I just woke up and it's raining outside, so I wanted to have a cozy little reading morning. Last night I picked up Bride by Hazelwood for the first time, and I got about 10% into it before falling asleep. And I like Hazelwood's writing style and always have, so it's nice to see her use that writing style in a different type of book than just a feminist rom-com. This is a fantasy werewolf and vampire book, and I feel like with her witty writing style, it makes the simple world building but just the plot go by so much easier and more digestible than a normal complex fantasy read. In today's video, I'm going to be reading Bride and then also a second popular TikTok book and telling you if they're worth your time. Just as a spoiler, I have heard great things about both this one and the other one, so they probably will be worth your time because I'm very excited to read both of them. But let's just get started with this one. I got a little further into Bride before I'm just deciding to stop for right now. I'll come back to it later. I did want to talk about synopsis for a second because I don't think I mentioned this earlier, and maybe you want to know what the book is about. This book follows our main character, Misery, who is a vampire, and she gets put in an arranged marriage to this guy named Lo, I think it's how you pronounce his name, and he's a werewolf. And the vampires and werewolf have had this ongoing feud for like centuries, and in this world there's also humans who also don't like either of them. I like the way that the story is being written so far. At parts of the book I'm literally like laughing, like it's genuinely like really funny, some of the things that she says. Just the way that Hazelwood writes and like talks about things, it's just like funny. It's like very much like Gen Z humor in my opinion. And lastly, I can't read this book on the internet without talking about the obvious, the elephant in the room that everyone's ignoring. If you've heard anything about this book, like anywhere at all on the internet, you know, it's like, since it's a werewolf book, it like verges on Omegaverse, which I'm not an Omegaverse girly. I have read multiple werewolf books in the past. I'm not an AO3 Omegaverse girl, okay? But I have heard there's at least one scene of nodding in this book, which if you don't know, don't bother Googling it. Don't bother figuring out what that is, but it is this like Omegaverse trope that Allie put in this book, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm like scared to death because not a trope I necessarily want to read at all. So I'll have to let you guys know when I come to that section how I feel about it. Obviously, I haven't read it yet, so I can't say it'll ruin the book, but it's definitely something I probably think could have gone without, but we'll see. So I'll update you guys soon with my thoughts. Hello, happy Friday. I'm at the 60% mark through this book. I was actually gonna stop at 50% this morning when I got out of bed, but then I just listened to the audiobook while I was like eating breakfast and getting ready, and I got another 10% in. So suffice it to say, this book is so good. It's so good. I heard the hype and I believed the hype because I like Hazelwood's writing, but I don't always love her books. One, because they're repetitive. Two, because the whole quirky female character thing is not my favorite character to read about. But this book has literal crack in it. It's so good and I'm flying through it. Now the audiobook is helping. I always read books faster when I'm listening to them in audiobook, obviously, but like I don't want to put this down. It's so good. So what do I tell you guys that's not spoilery? Firstly, the characters are everything in this book. Like I said, I usually don't love the characters in Allie's books, but Misery is by far my favorite of her female protagonists. She is so funny. She's so witty. She doesn't take anyone too seriously, and she's not, I don't want to say bumbling idiot because the other ones were not bumbling idiots, but they were just like kind of book smart, not street smart. I'll put it that way. But I feel like Misery is definitely a mix of both. And then Lo, the guy, oh my gosh, talk about a words of affirmation king. I love him. Okay, this is such a boy falls first book. At the beginning of every chapter, there's like a section at the top in italics, and that's supposed to be just a sentence or two in his point of view. The chapter one is long, but most of them are shorter. So while we mostly are in Misery's head, we can hear a couple like thoughts from Lo every chapter, and you can just tell he's absolutely falling for her. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's definitely going to be a plot twist in this book that I definitely already guessed. It's not too hard to guess, honestly, if you read the book, but like hearing his thoughts are just like confirming what I'm saying. And there was a section, it's at the bottom of page 201 and the top of page page 202. I'm gonna read you an out of context quote. He said, "I would take anything she chose to give me, the tiniest fraction of her entire world. I would take her for a single night, knowing that I'd lose her by morning. I'd take her healthy or sick or tired or angry or strong, and it would be my privilege. I would take her problems, her gifts, her moods, her passions, her jokes, her body. I would take every last thing if she chose to give it to me." I was listening in audiobook format at that part, and then I had to like pause and come read it in paperback and highlight it. I was like overwhelmed. That entire section, there's more to it. It's giving me 5-star energy because I'm just like screaming, like I can't put it down. I want to keep reading. So that's how I know that a book has that like 5-star mark to it. Haven't finished. I still have like 40% of the book left, but I'm hoping that it stays this good because I'm just like so excited about it. It's so good. Oh, and that scene still hasn't happened yet. The nodding scene. We'll see what happens there. Allie, if you're watching this, I know you're not watching this, but do this again, okay? Do this one right here. Do it again. Oh my goodness, you guys. Oh my goodness. I finished Bride last night. I literally finished this book in less than 3 days, which for me is pretty fast for 400 pages, and I have so many thoughts. Happy thoughts mostly. I wish I could have filmed last night in my room because I feel like so far on this vlog you've basically just been seeing me like in this corner and or like reading clips, but like all the emotions were going through my head. I was just like reading this book. This book was pure vibes. This was just so much fun. It was a little predictable at the end. And I also guessed one of the characters who ended up being a villain. I guessed them pretty early into the book, so I'm pretty proud that I did that. And I also guessed, actually to be honest, I guessed a lot of this book because I'm thinking now there's a plot twist that happens with her friend that went missing that she's trying to find. Did I mention that a couple days ago? That's part of the plot, that she's trying to find her missing friend. Anyway, at the very beginning of the book I guessed something that I won't say because it's a spoiler, but it ended up being pretty much right, so pat on the back for me for that. But this is Allie Hazelwood's first venture into paranormal slash fantasy romance, so like I'm not gonna dock points for it not being the most creative plot in the world. Like I said, this was purely just vibes and entertainment and fun. I was like laughing and smiling through the entire thing. Like nothing was incredibly stressful, which could dock a point in some cases because it was just like an easy, very much coincidence, everything just happened to fall into place. But also like in a book like this, you don't need any crazy plots, you don't need any big cliffhangers. It's a one and done super fun romance, and Lowe's boy falls first obsession trope in this book was amazing. I just love all of his quotes really. The problem that I'm having with this book, however, is that I feel like the best part of the book was in the middle, and coming towards the end, it wasn't like I was losing steam, but it was a little bit like I said, predictable. And there was a bit of a miscommunication plot in this book, which again is expected, but also not my favorite thing ever. In other books that I've read, miscommunication tropes are usually what make me dock a point. So yesterday I said this was a 5-star feeling, and it really does give me the excitement that a 5-star book gives, but as far as plot goes, it's leaning more towards a 4-star book. So I usually don't give half-star ratings, but I think I need to start doing that because I honestly can't give this a 4-star. It does not seem like a 4-star rated book. It's better than that, but also it doesn't have the same energy that my absolute top 5-star books give me sometimes. It had that yesterday, but towards the end, because I could guess it, kind of lost that little bit. So I'm gonna give this book a 4.5-star solid. They do half stars on Storygraph, they don't on Goodreads, so I'll put a 5-star marking on Goodreads, but it is a 4.5 in my heart. But either way, that's such a small little nuanced thing that I'm just doing for my own stats in my reading for the year. Overall, this was phenomenal. Oh, I forgot to talk about the whole nodding thing. I thought it was going to be more gruesome and detailed than it was. It really wasn't. It was just like a normal smut scene, technically, if you ignore that extra detail in it. Did I need it there? No. But it also wasn't the worst thing I've ever read in a smut scene. So like, we can overlook it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be grabbing this book for that scene, but it's not going to stop me from rereading the book or recommending it to you guys. If it really bothers you, just skip a couple pages. You'll be fine. That's my thoughts on this pretty viral book talk book. By far my favorite book by Allie Hazelwood I've ever read in my entire life. So far in this video, halfway done, this I would consider an immense success. Pick it up if you have the chance. It's so fun, so easy, so quick to read. Now on to book 2. Hello, it's time to move on to book 2, and I am in my bedroom. I don't know why I'm wearing my headphones still. I am speaking very quietly because it is midnight, so people are sleeping. The second book that I want to read in this vlog is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is a romantasy book, heavy on the romance. I've heard that people have raved about on Book Talk and online. It's YA, I'm pretty sure, and it follows our main characters Peyton and Kai. I have heard a lot about this book. I've heard that it's a very fun enemies to lovers. I've heard that there are trials and similar to the Hunger Games or Serpent and the Wings of Night vibes where it's like fight to the death. I've heard that there's magic and powers, and if you don't have the powers then you're not considered as worthy as those who do. Not anything crazy and original, but I've heard amazing ratings for this book. And I've also heard people say the romance is some of the best, and the sequel came out very recently, so I wanted to pick up the first book so I can catch up to everybody who's been loving it. Like I said, it's literally midnight right now, so I will not be filming much, but I do want to just start this before I go to bed, and hopefully I can get through this pretty quickly in the next couple days. It is like 500 pages, so oh gosh, has my hair looked like that the entire time? That's embarrassing. Okay. Anyway, it's like 500 pages, so a little bit longer compared to Bride, but really hyped for this, so let's get into it. Hello besties, happy Wednesday. We need to talk about Powerless because I have some thoughts, and unfortunately they're not all good ones. This book is really good, don't get me wrong, okay? I'm really enjoying this story. Peyton and Kai have a really bantery, fun dynamic, and the story is really entertaining. So although I have some critiques, I do genuinely enjoy this book. However, I think I may have gone into it with a little bit too high of expectations. I heard a couple of people not love this book and have some critiques for it, but for the majority, people really loved this book and said it was one of their favorite fantasy books ever, and so I was expecting something very similar from this. However, I think I may have just shot a little too high because this isn't really meeting all of my expectations. Number one, it's very formulaic, very predictable. It's a very normal trial fantasy book, right? So the people have to come, they do a fight to the death, whoever wins, whatever. I don't want to say I know everything that's going to happen, but I know a lot that's going to happen. And as scenes go on, something happens and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And then this is going to happen. Yep, check that box. It's very much follow the formulaic steps. Now, I'm not opposed to a formulaic book. I read a lot of the same genre, so of course I'm going to be able to predict a lot of things in pretty standard tropey books like this one. Fourth Wing is very similar in that it's pretty easy to guess what's going to happen in a lot of it, but I do think Fourth Wing has some originality to it. This book, however, does not. The trial trope has definitely been done a million times, but I most recently read Serpent and the Wings of Night at the end of May, I'm pretty sure, and that was a vampire romance with trials and stuff, and it is very similar to this. So even though I read it months ago, they're just so similar that I'm having a hard time not comparing this book to that, except I do think that Serpent and the Wings of Night had a little more depth to its writing, but then again, this is YA, and that's another thing too. I keep forgetting that it's a YA book, so maybe that excuses its tropiness and its predictability because it is technically meant for a younger audience. But if you guys have heard of the book series Red Queen, I'm trying to figure out when it came out. Let me look it up. I read it years ago and it came out in 2015. So definitely way before this book was published. It is incredibly similar to this book. Now, although it is technically dystopian and this is romantasy, so many things are so similar. In that book, there are the reds versus the silvers. The silvers have powers, the reds don't, and so the silvers are better. In this book, the same way. Also very similar is I'm getting similar romance vibes. So in this book, there's kind of a love triangle forming between the two princes and Peyton, and similar to Red Queen, Cal was the prince. I think it was Maven was his brother. There's a love triangle in that book. So I'm not trying to say that this book is necessarily copying, but I am really seeing so many references to that book. The last critique I have is the writing, unfortunately, is just in my opinion a little sloppy. Like I said, I know it's a YA book, so I'm not expecting something crazy complicated and deep, and I have been reading mostly adult fantasies recently, so I have to temper my expectations because this again is directed towards a younger audience. However, I just feel like it can be a little repetitive. They seem to say the same things a lot. I was like 20% into the book and they'd already started 3 chapters. I counted 3 chapters with the word blood blood, or blood was dripping down, or I was covered in blood, and I was like, can we find a more creative way to start a scene? The authors used the same word multiple times in a sentence. There's also a section where it was like meal scene, training scene, alone with Kai scene, and then it kind of repeated. It was like another meal, another training scene, another alone with Kai scenes. I was like, did we just do the same thing twice? I mean, different scenes, different conversations, but also like it literally was like the same sequence of chapters again. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm being a little picky, and like I said, I don't want to trash this book. I think this book is, like I said, very entertaining. Loving the characters, loving the banter. I'm excited to see what happens, and I'm intending to finish it and enjoy it, but I was expecting like new 5-star fantasy vibes from what people were saying, and I just don't think that's what I'm going to be getting from this book, unfortunately, because I do have some qualms with it. So that's where I'm going to leave you guys today. I'm currently at the 40% mark. I've been going back and forth between reading this physically and reading with the audiobook, so I'm really working through it. Anyway, I'm going to leave you now, but I will talk to you shortly. I wasn't really like planning on updating, but I wanted to make a couple points. Number one, this is marketed, I think, as an enemies to lovers, but it's really just like bantery friends-ish to lovers. Like even from the beginning, I barely felt the enemy vibes, which is totally fine. I'm enjoying their relationship a lot. The scene that just happened, I'm like giggling a little bit, kicking my feet. But if you're expecting like enemies to lovers, like hatred for each other, they say they hate each other, they don't. I don't think they ever have, you know? So those are not the vibes you're gonna get from this book. The second thing is, I'm back to the writing. Unfortunately, the writing's not very good. It's fast-paced and addicting in general, yes, but there are always like these little quirks about her style that I just don't love. Sometimes she over-explains things, like she'll say the same thing multiple times in multiple chapters, or when she's trying to convey the relationship that Kai has with his dad, the king, she'll say and tell over and over that they have a strained relationship, and yet the first time we ever saw him in the book, he was like laughing at a joke that Kai said. So I know that he's supposed to be like a villain, and he is a villain, but like in my head he's not portrayed to be as evil because she's only telling us that he's evil. She's not really showing us. So it's a weird combination between tell not show, weird quirks about the writing, but also like it's really fast paced and easy to read. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm currently at chapter 44, 70% of the way through. Yeah, but I need to stop yapping. So I'll let you know my thoughts when it's finished. Okay, spooky lighting. I just finished Powerless like 10 seconds ago, and I had to come on here and record a clip. I wish I could have filmed my last couple minutes reading this book. Like the entire time I was like visually screaming. I do want to do a full complete wrap up tomorrow morning, but I wanted to say a couple spoilery thoughts here first. So if you haven't read this book yet and you don't want to be spoiled about it, skip to this timestamp over here. I'll give you a second to do that because I have some thoughts about this book that I need to let out. So I'm gonna let you have a second. Skip to that little timestamp if you don't want to be spoiled. Okay, spoilers start now. For those of you that have read this book before, hear me out when I say this. Was Kit actually a necessary character? Think about it. I don't like Kit very much. He's fine. But the point of Kit in this book basically was for Peyton to betray him. But she also betrayed Kai. Okay, sure, there was a love triangle plot, but because it was dual POV and we had Kai's POV, we all know that Kai was going to win the girl at the end. Like, everyone knew this. So, like, it was never gonna be Kit. Kit never did anything that Kai couldn't have done because they were always at the palace. And Kai's whole problem with his dad was all about how his dad always looked up to his brother, but not him, and always like forced him to be the enforcer, be the brutal monster, that kind of thing. Okay, there could be that competition between brothers, but I didn't think that they were ever really competing against each other. In fact, the whole plot of Kit wanting to be involved more and Kai trying to protect his brother was such a minimal thing. I'm like, imagine instead Kai was the only prince. So maybe he is an enforcer, maybe he's the future king, he could be both, but if he's the only prince, then he's constantly being compared to his dad. So his dad has all of his focus on him as a kid, adding more trauma. Number two, he could have the same physicalities as his dad, because the entire time during the book, she was constantly comparing Kit to Kit's father, the king, and saying how similar they are and how slowly and slowly she's separating the two because she hated the king but learned to like Kit. At the very, very end, though, Kit gets angry at her because she betrays him, obviously, and then she goes and kills the dad, and it's like killing her relationship with Kit as well because they have the same face. But imagine how much more powerful that could be if it was like she was killing Kai, because Kai had the same face as his dad. So if Kai was the only prince, instead of killing this relationship with Kit, which really wasn't even a full relationship in the first place, she could just really hit home that idea of Kai and breaking up that whole relationship because she killed his father and because he killed her father. But does he know that his first kill was her father? Something tells me he doesn't. Something tells me... Okay, so my SD card just ran out of storage and I was like ranting, so I'm pissed about it. So now I'm filming on my iPhone and I'm sure this footage looks terribly janky, but I'm gonna stop yapping. All I want to say is I think Kit was a completely unnecessary character. That being said, the ending had me absolutely shocked, absolutely flabbergasted. I don't know why I didn't put two and two together in my head that because Kai is the enforcer, he could have killed her dad. Like, it never clicked for me, which is on me for being a little bit not quick enough, I guess, but really cool plot twist. Love that. There's a lot going on in my head right now, but hopefully in the morning I can like gather my thoughts and clear my SD card so we can have a proper outro. It is raining outside and I'm actually about to start a second reading vlog, so the cozy vibes are here and I'm very excited, but I wanted to do a wrap up of Powerless and end today's video. Last night I literally wrote a little note card of things that I wanted to say, so I do have bullet points, but I want to make this quick. Powerless, good book. Really, really good book. I know I complained a lot about it and all of my complaints hold true. On my note card, I just reviewed them. I put a lot of tell not show, a lot of repetition, some like sentence things like saying the same word multiple times in a sentence just kind of pissed me off, starting multiple chapters with the same words, you know. And it's also like very similar to other tropey books like Red Queen, Serpent and the Wings of Night. I also heard that One Dark Window is very similar to this, so not the most original book, definitely had some qualms with it. However, I want to make it very clear that even though I did have problems, this was such a fun read. The banter in this book is just so funny. Like, could it be a little bit cringy at times? Sure, but like I was eating it up. Kai and Peyton's romance together was so much fun, and it also is a very essential part of this book. So if you like romanticities where it's heavy on the romance, less on the fantasy, I'd pick this one up. I didn't really think there was much world building at all, which I was kind of okay with. It's not my favorite thing in the world to read world building. Would I have appreciated some more? Maybe, but I'm telling you this because if you prefer a fantasy more focused on character relationships and romance instead of the world and everything like that, this would be one to pick up because it does check that box. And also if you're new to fantasy or if you want a YA fantasy, this is also one to pick up. It's really good. The slow burn in this book is actually like slow burning. Like, I didn't really expect it to be like that, but basically like we get a lot of romantic moments, like especially with Kai and her. They're like always flirty, always bantering, they're so romantic with each other, but like it's so slow. So I'm assuming in the second book, once we get past that cliffhanger ending, if you know, you know, when the romance plot is in that book, I'm sure that we will, you know, progress with their relationship, but like everything was just like flirty. I love a slow burn, and I think this one was well executed and super fun. So I think that's all that I have on my list to say. Oh, except for the fact that Kai was head over heels for her like all the time. He was so cute. I like being in his point of view a lot because you can tell how much he adores her. In total, I'm giving this book 4 stars. It is a really good read. Not my favorite fantasy ever, unfortunately. It's not a 5-star that I know a lot of people were giving it, but it really was very fun, very enjoyable. So 4 stars is my final rating. I'll put that up on Goodreads and Storygraph. And then I do want to read Reckless eventually, which is the sequel that very recently came out, and I've heard a lot of things about Reckless. People who hated the first book love the second. People who love the first book don't love the second. So I'm thinking that maybe in the second book my problems with the first book will be resolved. I don't hate this book by any means, but I'm hoping that maybe Reckless will be better because I've heard that it has a little bit different of a style. So if you would like a vlog for Reckless, let me know. I will make one. But yeah, this was 4 stars. Very successful, but surprisingly, Bride by Hazelwood was a 4.5 from me. And just because that rating, I liked this one better. I thought I was going to like Powerless better, but this one was so funny. You know my problems with this one, but this one surprised me. I thought it was going to be just a little bit more boring, but it actually like really shocked me. I was laughing all the time, and I also think that this book is very self-aware. It knows that it can be really cringe, really over the top, really dramatic in its tropes, especially with all of the Megaverse stuff. So I think that it's almost laughing at itself, and being self-aware is part of Ali Hazelwood's writing style, and that's why I love it so much, because we are all kind of, you know, collectively reading this book and like joking at it but still enjoying it simultaneously. So this was fantastic, this was really good, and I think this vlog was a success. If you want me to do another video like this where I read popular book talk books, let me know, and let me know what books you want me to read. As always, subscribe to my channel. I'm posting every 4 days during the summer, and I have some really cool reading vlogs coming up. If you want to follow me on Goodreads and Storygraph, they're both linked down below. That's where I track all my books. And if you want to follow me on my personal Instagram account, it is also down below. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. Sending you so much love. And if you want to watch my last video where I purged my 250 book long Goodreads TBR, crazy video, but I'll have it linked right here on the screen. Goodbye!